right, hello and welcome back to the virtual seminar on mass notification tools and strategies. We are going to go ahead and start up the second half of our seminar today. Our third session is on instant activation, best practices for using activation buttons. Remember, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them during the webinar at any time, and they will be addressed during the Q&A portion at the end of each presentation. Now, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Matthew Mauzy. Matthew Mauzy is the Emergency Response Technology Manager for the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. In this role, he is responsible for the IT behind the Alert Carolina Emergency Notification System, which is used by 55,000 plus students, faculty, and staff. Matthew is the Change Advisory Board Manager, the process lead for major IT incidents, and is currently the project manager for the migration of UNC's on-premise WordPress instances to the cloud. He implemented a one-button solution to automate initial emergency notifications, reducing a multi-step 15-minute process to a single human step with full activation in less than 2 minutes. Since 1996, Matthew has been involved in emergency services as a swiftwater or flood and rope rescue instructor in New Orleans, Louisiana, and Northern Maine. He is the chief of South Orange Rescue Squad and serves as the lead LUH-72 rescue tech for North Carolina Helicopter Aquatic Rescue Team. Please let me welcome Matthew.
Good afternoon. Apologies to everybody for being the first presenter back after lunch if you're on East Coast time or you've switched for today. Hopefully I will keep it at least a little bit interesting so that you don't drift off into your early morning or early afternoon nap time. So just a little bit of a background about the Alert Carolina Emergency Notification System. We have 4 tiers for message types. They are emergency warning being the highest one in which we activate all of our distribution methods. Crime alerts, adverse conditions, which cover university condition changes, and then just general informational ones. So emergency warning, which we'll dig into a little bit deeper for today as we talk about some of the automation, has 5 scenario types. And you'll see 3 listed here being an armed and dangerous individual on campus, large fire or hazmat incident, and tornado warning. The other 2 are an all clear notification and then our semesterly full system test buttons. Crime alert, for those of you in higher education that are familiar with the Clery Act, you can think of this as the notification tier that meets the requirements under Clery. So all of your notification types that you're already familiar with, such as criminal homicide, sex offenses, robbery, all of those types of notifications, pattern crimes, all of those fit under our crime alert. You could also think of crime alert as a timely warning a little bit. A new tier for us is what we're referring to as adverse conditions. It used to be just an adverse weather type notification until the last year. We actually had to close campus due to water main breaks so that we weren't able to get water onto campus, which then affected everything from dining service to hygiene in dorms and anything and everything in between. So we adapted adverse weather to adverse conditions. It's still really the same intent in that we are conveying times and situations in which the normal operational status of the university is altered, but it just widens those conditions so that it's not just our typical closures for hurricanes or winter storm warnings or anything else like that. So the Alert Carolina system, as Jessica mentioned, we have right now about 56,000 text messages, users that are subscribed for text messages. We have a total of 62,000, a little over 62,000 users in the system. and that is essentially every student, faculty, and staff member of the university. We post out to our various official social media accounts, and so that, at last check, covered more than 315,000 followers. Of course, the vast majority of those are for Facebook and Twitter for the official University of North Carolina social media accounts. Clearly, we don't have that much of a following base for just our emergency notifications. So why do we have 62,000 emails subscribed to the system? Well, that's because we don't give our students, faculty, or staff the ability to opt out. So if you have a UNC email account, and everyone should to conduct university business, you're automatically opted into our alert notification system. We do give the ability to voluntarily opt in or out for text messages, but we're really proud of the fact that we have more than 91% of our users that have provided a cell phone. And the way in which we do that, we require, we require that they either provide that cell phone number, opt out, or confirm that the cell number that's already registered in the system is valid every time they change their password. And up until the beginning of the year, we required passwords to be changed every 90 days. So that form, those set of questions was constantly in front of our users. And so we got a really high voluntary rate of users subscribing. If you're looking to implement a system, I highly recommend that you get a method that puts your system in front of users as part of something that they're already doing. If you have to depend on them knowing additional website or somewhere else to go to subscribe to your notifications or to provide you with their cell phone number, you're going to have a much lower subscription rate. And if I just moved one more slide further, I would have shown exactly that. So this is the screen that is in front of their process for renewing their user password. And so you can see over on the left, it's the first one. We're requiring that they update their Alert Carolina contact information even before providing their emergency contact, and then their security questions so that they can self-reset their username, self-reset their password in the event that they forget it. So Amanda talked about earlier automation and integration. The reason that we got that we pulled Alertus into our overall emergency notification system was primarily was automating it. So even under those 5 scenarios that I mentioned earlier for emergency warning level, all of the content was already predefined. There was nobody coming up with unique messaging that said what building or what location or anything specific to that unique reason for activating the system. All of our initial notifications were all generic to the type of event. All the content was already predetermined and predefined into our tools. It still took nearly 15 to 16 minutes for full activation of that system. And that was because we have disparate tools that make up the Alert Carolina system. And it led to a lot of copying and pasting from one source of information into another tool, and then several clicks through to send that information. By integrating in Alertus as being the activation point, and I'll show how we do that here in a minute with our hardware buttons, by using Alertus as that initial method for activating, instead of a serial process that required a manual human intervention to perform one step, move to the next, and so on, by a simple press of a hardware button, all of our distribution methods are activated in parallel. And so you can see we reduced an overall time for a human required to perform specific steps of more than 15 minutes to literally the press of a button, and then everything goes off without requiring any other intervention. Now, we still spend time for our individuals in our IT operations center, our 24/7 operations center. They still follow up and check to ensure accuracy and that all of the integrations worked as intended, but they are no longer in the middle of that process, the ones that are actually depended on to activate those various steps. So a bit of a diagram. This is what it was before. I'm required by my former leadership to continue to use these stick figures because I spent an inordinate amount of time, so I have to get a good return on investment. So they'll show up in every single presentation that I do about Alert Carolina from here to eternity. Authority to activate our system for emergency notifications rests in the hands of our UNC police supervisor out in the field. So if a situation occurs in which that individual makes the determination that the Alert Carolina system needs to be activated, he or she calls back into our 911 center, informs them to activate, and then that UNC police telecommunicator activates the system. Prior to using Alertus's one-button solution, that was a manual process in which that telecommunicator turned to the Federal Signal Control Station, activated the siren, picked up the phone, called our ITS 24/7 Operations Center, told them that they were activating the Alert Carolina system, told them what scenario, and then hung up the phone. And then that operator in the ITS Operations Center then went through every single one of these tools to activate the system. So how did we streamline that? By moving that all behind that single button press. In the event of a system failure, we of course still have the ability to manually activate all of those tools, the downstream tools, but under normal operations, that UNC telecommunicator, after receiving approval to activate the system, pushes the button and then everything goes as intended. So just a slightly different view of how we activate, and then the various tools and components that are initiated off of that. Right now, we use the hardware panic buttons, but we also have the ability to activate from the web console, from the Alertus website, as well as utilizing the Alertus mobile application to activate the system as well. That in turn launches our outdoor warning sirens. It uses Rave as our mass notification distribution partner for email, SMS, social media, posting to our websites, and various other places. We use the traditional EAS, the emergency alert system, to take over our campus cable TVs with the Blankenburst image. And then we use another cloud-based software provider called XMatters to do various integration points for specific things like notifying our campus emergency response officials, sending out news releases, making notification to our on-call media relations, and then other key contact points for the university, such as campus operators. So this is what our series of buttons look like. They have nice safety covers over them so that they're not accidentally bumped into and activated. But as you can see, they are all 5 are up there for our 5 predetermined, pre-identified notification scenarios at that emergency warning level. And because we do have IT security in mind, we like to utilize the hide in plain sight, the security through obscurity ideal. And so prior to these buttons going online, our third shift, who may have had a little bit too much free time on their hands, sought out various soda vendors, and it's a little scary how closely the colors match up to all of those. So digging in a little bit about the tools and technology behind our system. So using Alertus as our primary activation point, that kicks off the various downstream partners that make up the Alert Carolina emergency notification system. Using the Alertus hardware button, of course, we then activate Alertus's beacons that are spread in a small number of our locations across campus. And that in turn, in parallel, activates the Federal Signal outdoor warning sirens. In addition, we kick a notification to our EAS, as I mentioned, and then those other 2 notifications off to XMatters and to Rave. All of those via either CAP integrations or other similar API integration methods. So again, as Justin started off talking this morning, we depend on not just a single delivery method. It's absolutely in our playbook for best practice, and I think we heard it from all of our other speakers this morning, that just depending on a single method, whether that's text, email, or something else, to notify your community isn't reliable. I believe Amanda said that the percentages dramatically increase just by having two, and then you ramp up that percentage of successful notification to your audience by adding on a third, fourth, and even more. Rave is hosted in the cloud, so it's not dependent on on-campus infrastructure in the event that we had some major event that took out our various IT services on campus. And it, because all of the content is predefined and predetermined, it really truly is a 3-click launch for those scenarios in the event that we had to manually activate it due to an upstream system failure. We have forward and backward integration from Rave to Alertus. So in the event that we had to activate for another specific scenario in which we were adding in location-specific information or incident-specific information that we then wanted to use Alertus's desktop notification or their beacons, we have CAP integration enabled from Rave back to Alertus to do that activation. Alertus is located in 2 of our data centers. It runs on redundant virtual servers, primarily so that we can do systems updates, whether that's software update of the Alertus application itself or the operating systems updates of the virtual servers themselves, without having any impact on our end user subscribing clients, whether those are desktop alerts or the hardware beacons. As I mentioned earlier, we use the hardware buttons to activate, but we do also have a backup, the method to activate with either the mobile app from anywhere that we can establish a VPN connection back to our campus, or the same VPN connection back to activate via the web page. We utilize the desktop alert software from Alertus, and we are currently in the process of integrating that into our standard application build set for all of the computers that are purchased by students, faculty, and staff through directly through the university. That would mean that the application would then, by default, show up on almost every single computer that is on campus. The reason that Alertus, of course, is not a cloud-based provider is that the vast majority of those endpoints are, of course, in our buildings and on our campus. And so we maintain those servers on campus and use Alertus for the beacons as our primary in-building alert notification method. And the next matter is bringing up our last kind of very niche, very focused alert notification system, with the prior methods being the mass notifications to reach via email, text, and social media, the vast majority of our campus constituents. X Matters then uses those targeted notifications to bring in our emergency response officials, those campus senior leadership individuals in key positions, with a text-to-voice, both phone call, text messages, and then emails that inform them of conference call information, provides that all in those notifications, and then brings them together for a briefing as soon after we can determine the extent and the magnitude of what that particular activation incident or event was that caused the system to be activated. The X Matters, just like our other tools, are activated via REST APIs, webhooks, CAP, and the various other integration methods that Amanda covered briefly earlier. One of our newest methods, and it kind of struck me while Tommy was talking earlier this morning in describing the active shooter or gunshot detection systems as kind of the next generation of the fire alarm, where in that scenario, you wouldn't expect a human to be in the mix for receiving a detection of a fire alarm system and then in turn reactivating those audible warning systems. We've kind of taken that similar philosophy of where in the past we had a human in the mix for the National Weather Service would issue a warning our 911 center would receive that warning and then make a determination as to whether that was a type of warning that we had a policy and protocol in place for then rebroadcasting, and then secondary to that, whether that applied to our area. While that wasn't a super complicated process, it still took several minutes to make those determinations and then to get those warnings out. In the case of a tornado warning, which is one of our 5 scenarios for that highest tier of that emergency warning, it was then as simple as pressing the button to activate the system. But for the other types of warnings in which we rebroadcast those National Weather Service warnings, such as severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado watches, it could take 5 to 6 to 7 minutes. And in the case of severe thunderstorm warning, that could almost lead to that particular weather event being on top of our campus community, as opposed to giving them a little bit more of an early warning. So utilizing the National Weather Service's, the content that they already provide, what they refer to as VTEC, those codes that are embedded in each one of those National Weather Service advisory messages, using that, you can then build in automatic notification so that it only activates based off of the type of alert that you care about, whether that's winter weather, as we're currently under right now, flash floods, severe thunderstorms, tornadoes, and the like. Once we make the determination, once the system makes the determination that it is one of those types of events that we care, it then applies the National Weather Service's geofenced, geoboundary areas, incorporates the geofenced area that we have determined to be the area of concern that we want to activate. And in this image, it's that light blue area highlighted by the green arrow. If those two align or overlap in any way, then the system makes the determination to send out that notification. And so we already have a predefined message content that's ready to go. It inserts the subject heading that is specific from the National Weather Service to that particular event. So it lists the type of notification and the time in which it is in effect, both starting and then the projected end time, embeds those into the text message, the email, and the other various distribution methods, and then sends that out. So essentially, using this, we rebroadcast the National Weather Service alert in less than a minute, where it took 5 to 6 times that with a human in the middle. The next part I wanted to talk about for one of our best practices was the hosting of our emergency notification website off campus. This is a website that routinely just sits there and doesn't get much of any traffic, which is a good thing. Its entire purpose, alertcarolina.unc.edu, really is to share emergency information about events and incidences that are happening on our campus. So ideally, there's nothing for anybody to go view. During events in which we alter the operational level of campus, and thankfully in our recent history, that has been weather related as opposed to something else traumatic, those are the times in which we see high interest in events in which we have a huge number of users going to the website to check the status of the university. So as you can see in this graph that shows the users viewing of the Alert Carolina website, it's little to no activity. In the January 28th, you see were some of our snow-related events, and then the ones that were just before October of 2018 were hurricanes that were impacting our campus. So it's a site that literally goes to maybe 10 user views per day to peaking out to more than 70,000 individual user views in that one-day period. To give that a little bit of context, the graph overlaid over the top is the daily views for the UNC, official unc.edu website. So those are 30 to 40, peaking out routinely 30 to 40,000 individual user views for our campus's official website, and those are shadowed by that peak view of 70,000 users during that individual time. One thing to keep in mind when looking at where you want to host this website and the type of website that you build, make sure that that website can handle automatic traffic scaling. If you're testing it under routine conditions in which you're maybe getting 10, 20, even 100 or 1,000, that's dramatically different amounts of traffic that your infrastructure has to handle when it scales up to more than 70,000 individual users. And if you think about any one of the tragic incidents of school shootings that has happened, we're a campus of 50 to 60,000 people. If you assume that most of those individuals, that 50,000, has at least one, whether that's a parent or a spouse, then right there you're talking about jumping to 100,000 individuals that are most likely going to check to see what's going on, and the place in which they're going to check is your official university website or some other website in which you're including into your communications. So if your web infrastructure can't handle, immediately kind of scaling up to those, that's someplace that you need to be investigating and providing additional resources to assure that it can handle. The second point I would encourage you to look at is make sure that that website is viewable on a mobile device. What we see in the percentages from traditional desktop-based browsers versus mobile devices and tablets, about a 60% to a 40%, 60% desktop users on a normal day flips and actually gets higher, so that we have seen upwards of 60% of our traffic going to that Alert Carolina website be from mobile devices, primarily, of course, iOS and Android devices. And then secondary to that, we even see tablet devices being a higher percentage than traditional desktop browsers. So on that website, this is a snapshot of some winter weather previously. We try to lump all of our notifications onto the homepage for that Alert Carolina website. So that makes it easy on our media relations folks that are crafting those messages. They don't have to dig into a specific URL. All they do is provide that root URL, that alertcarolina.unc.edu, and all of the messaging content that is specific to whatever scenario or event that's currently going on, all of that is provided right there up front for the user, so that they don't have to search for it and that we don't have to help them find it when they can't locate it. A secondary suggestion that we have found very successful is providing our user community, whether that's actual on-campus students, faculty, or staff, whether that's parents, whether that's community members that are neighbors that border on our campus, providing them an easy method to ask questions that are specific to that emergency notification system. Those of you that are part of higher education for campuses or even businesses of any size know that your organization has multiple official channels in which you're presenting content and information for your agency, organization, or university, and just as many methods for people to ask questions or to solicit input and information. So by providing a single place in which we can direct anyone with a question about the emergency notification system itself or a notification that we've sent, we provide a much quicker turnaround for getting those questions answered by the individuals that have the authority and the accurate information to provide that response. So in addition to providing this page up front, we've tried to knock out our number one most common question that we get asked, and that's how do I register or how do I unregister my phone number or my email address as part of the Alert Carolina system. And then the other recommendation that I would make to those of you that have websites for your emergency notification system that are either standalone or are a component for another existing website is provide a notification archive online that's available to literally anyone of all of your notifications. So these shouldn't really be proprietary or sensitive notifications, because you're sending them to all of your user community, to your students, faculty, and staff, to your employees or whomever else. And so by providing these online, we've cut down on the other time burden on our staff, which is providing information in response to either query requests or just general public record requests. Prior to having all of these notifications online, for every public records request, and we were routinely seeing requests from the media or from someone else that was, give us the last 5 years of all of your notifications. Prior to having those online, that was a very manual, time-intensive step to pull those out of the other tools in which were the authoritative sources for sending those, put them all together in whatever method, and then ship them over. Now, by having them online, our legal department has made the determination that this meets the requirements for providing all of that information in the public records requests. So while the message content for these, what we post online is the exact same content that's sent out in email. And for every Alert Carolina message, we always send an email and we always post it online. And so those two are identical. The message content that would be different would be the text message. But essentially, the text message is really taken as a shortened version, and most times it's almost identical to the subject message, and so the blue bolded headline here, and so that meets the requirements because we're not sending different messages to various other places that we aren't also including all of that content here as our authoritative source for that notification or that event. One of the things that we've learned in our emergency notification system has been in effect for almost 10 years now. When we started off, it was a very disparate group of tools. And so we had one tool that was posting for our websites. We had one tool that would do email, a different tool that would do text messages, news releases, and so on. As we unified those tools into fewer and fewer various platforms and integrated them together, the real lesson that we learned was just because you can be flexible in the message content doesn't mean that you should. And what do I mean by that? So all of those distribution methods that you see at the bottom with the blue check marks, all of those could have individual tailored message content. So your website banner could be different than your digital signage content, could be different than your email, could be different than your Facebook message, which could be different even still from your tweet or your SMS message. So just because your system has that capability, and those of us in the IT world like to provide options and capabilities and flexibility, what we found is that by providing that, all of these various fields then have to be filled out by the individual that is making the request for that message activation. Those in turn have to be moved over into the various tools that are then used to send out that message. So even though we use a very small number of tools to send that, for a tailored specific message event, that's still 2, 3 different tools. That's still 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 different places in which to copy that information. So if you don't take anything away from this, if you're standing up your system, start simple. If that doesn't meet the requirements of whoever is your authority for sending that message, whether it's university communications, the university police department, whatever body is the authoritative individual for sending out those messages, if they can live with, give me a subject for an email, that's the same subject I'm going to use as the banner on my website. I'm going to take that subject and I'm going to insert it in as a text message, and I'm going to add a few other little things that are consistent for that text message every time I send a text message, and then give me this long content for the email, and then I'm going to post that to Facebook as well, and also put on the website. If they can't, if providing those 3 unique and arguably even 2 unique message content points, if that's not enough, then start broadening it out and go, okay, why is it that you need a text message that is different from the tweet? Or why do you need a Facebook message that's different from the Twitter post that's different from the subject that's different from the SMS. That'll save you a whole lot of time and frustration in the long run. And nobody noticed that I misspelled emergency in that one. It's only one part of my job. I can't be held responsible for everything. The last part that we use from Alertus is the desktop notification. And so I mentioned that we're in the process of having this client added into all of our computer image builds. We right now make the assurance that we only reserve this, that we only utilize this method for that highest level, that emergency notification. And that's really to make sure that we don't get folks that are uninstalling the software. What we see routinely is our most frequent notifications previously for text messages was severe thunderstorm warnings. And for most of us, for the time of year in which that severe thunderstorm season was during the summer, in which a significant portion of our campus individuals, namely students, were off campus. So after every severe thunderstorm warning during the summer, we would routinely get a unsubscribe me, I don't want to get these notifications, and all of this. Well, if a little bit of that Chicken Little kind of concept, if you have people that are unsubscribing during those times, then they've already pulled themselves out of that system. So in the event that you have to get in touch with them for one of those other significant events, such as an armed and dangerous individual on campus, they've already unsubscribed from your text message. And so now they are going to receive one less distribution method than you already had. As part of that reasoning, we've actually removed automated text message notifications from our National Weather Service alerts and are in the process of setting up an opt-in list for individuals that want to be informed via text message for those National Weather Service alerts that could affect them. So common user problems that we've run into. Text messages. If you're sending text messages to individuals, regardless of the platform or the tool that you're sending, you're going to have problems. Whether it's the carrier, whether it's the third-party aggregators, there are so many steps and hands that are in the middle from you typing in the text message content and pressing send before that message ultimately gets received on the handset of the user that are out of your control. You're going to constantly get messages that aren't received or that the user doesn't think that are received. Again, as I mentioned just previously about people that didn't want those text messages for the severe thunderstorm warnings because they were out of state for the summer and it didn't affect them and it was one little nuisance that they thought they could eliminate, they were sending stop back to those. And under current law, the vendor that sent that message is obligated and has to add a stop onto that text message platform. And so the next message that we send to that user, it doesn't go through. And so one of the things that we were finding was that people were sending stop for one message and then expecting to get all of these different type messages and weren't getting those. And it was a little bit cumbersome to dig into the various tools to find out what the reason why and the cause, ultimately being the stop from that end user, and then having what's in effect a start reissued and reactivated so that that user was going to continue to receive new messages. The second big, most common problem that we hear from users as regards to text messages is the idea of, I didn't get that text message. Well, good, we didn't send one. One of the things that we found was as we made minor changes in the protocol for distributing messages as it related to National Weather Service was people don't always read your notifications. People don't always read your email. And so while we sent out multiple mass emails about the fact that we were changing and we're no longer going to send text messages for National Weather Service events such as severe thunderstorm warnings, we were still continuing, even months after we turned it off, we were still continuing to get a trickle of user reports reporting that the system was broken and that they weren't receiving text messages. Even to the degree that friends would talk amongst themselves, and one person would say, oh yeah, I got the text message for that severe thunderstorm warning. It wasn't from us. We're not sure who they got it from because we had stopped sending them. And so that reinforces the fact that Good communication, thorough communication has to occur for any time you are changing what your audience perceives as a standardized and consistent method in which you're using to communicate to them. Emails, of course, spam folders. Despite the fact that we are an Office 365 user base, and despite the fact that through that we have a pretty extensive control over how our email gets delivered, we've whitelisted all of our sending servers through Rave system. There's only so deep and so much control that we can implement to ensure that all of those mass notification emails actually make it into the user's inbox. And even then, we have zero control over whether or not that user looks at that email or reads it or doesn't have some other type of rule in a place that just pushes our email into some other folder or filing method or deletes it entirely. Despite the fact that we do not require individuals to provide a cell phone number, despite the fact that we don't pull that cell phone number from any other student information system where they have a bona fide benefit to getting it. So say in our student information system, you provide a cell phone number so that you get information about your grades or about a tuition bill due. We don't pull from any of those other systems. So our list of cell phone numbers in the Alert Carolina system are only phone numbers in which those individual users have willingly provided that number for us. We still get bad data. I can't explain why somebody goes into a system and puts in some fake number, 919-123-4567 or 53099 or whatever else, why they put that phone number in as opposed to just going, nope, I don't want to provide you with my phone number. No idea. If somebody's got an answer, I'd love to hear it, because we actually spend more time than I would like to admit going through and validating phone numbers so that our metrics, our reporting data that we provide out is actually accurate and reflects good, valid phone numbers and good delivery attempts to those phone numbers. So what are we looking at next? We want to add more Alertus beacons. If you are a campus similar in our size, you know that whether that's higher education, manufacturing, industry, or anything else, you know that the number of buildings that you have and then the number of conference rooms, classrooms, open spaces quickly starts to add up. So having a process, an approval process, a governance committee, or whatever other method and mechanism in place to prioritize those locations is going to be essential. We're not blessed with a dump truck full of money in which can back up and then tomorrow we can roll out all of the Alertus beacons or any other emergency notification technology that would truly be of value to our campus in a single day or a single project or even a single year. We'd really like to integrate tighter in with with wireless emergency alerts, so the WEA, the FEMA, the National Notification System. In the state of North Carolina, the authority to activate the wireless emergency alert systems is pushed down to the county level, and then there is only one individual in a county that has that authority to activate the system. So we do not have the ability, not for technology reasons, but by policy for the state of North Carolina, to automatically activate WEA. So we send a notification. We send a notification when our system activates. We send that notification to that individual at the county level, and then they in turn have to manually activate the system. If we could tie that in tighter and remove that human, then that increases a wider audience for notifications for those emergency scenarios in which we're talking about. And we're not so concerned about that initial automated activation footprint going wider for things like a major fire, hazmat spill, or tornado warning, because clearly for tornado warnings, there are other ways in which the campus community can be notified. Fire and major fire, hazmat, chemical spills can certainly have other alternate notification methods that are hyper-localized, but we're really focused on that active shooter, that armed and dangerous individual that's on campus. From my office, I can see one of our Tier 1 trauma centers throughout the state of North Carolina. So it's not a stretch of the imagination to assume that we have a considerable number of individuals on campus every single day that are not faculty, that are not staff, and that are not students. So while we're notifying 50 to 60,000 people that are affiliated with the university, there's easily probably a similar number to that are on campus, that are passing through, that might just be here for the day, that aren't and can't be subscribed to our notification system, that there would certainly be value in which notifying. A traumatic event, an active shooter event on campus doesn't just stop at the border of campus. For us, that individual is most likely going to cross over our campus onto one of the main streets from the town of Chapel Hill. And so having the ability to notify those residents, those businesses, those campus partners and community that border up against our campus, having the ability to notify them as quick as possible could eventually lead to saving lives and preventing casualties. And then last, we always ask, what do our individual users need? What do they want? And we have more than a dozen individual schools, whether that's the law school, med school, business school, that are on campus, and each of their audiences have specific needs and desires. And so it's truly a partnership amongst all of the various stakeholders across campus to make sure that from the high level all the way down to the individual user, that we are able to provide emergency notification information in a timely, accurate manner, in a way in which we can assure that those individuals are notified. Thank you.
All right, Matthew, that was awesome. We appreciate it. Just due to the time and trying to stay on schedule with each person's presentation, we're just going to have, we have a couple questions here. We're just going to ask one that seems like it could, kind of be for, multiple people, multiple buildings, multiple situations. So we'll do this one question, and then the other ones we will reach out directly and answer those for you after today's session. So the one question we do have for Matthew, with regard to your outdoor mass notification federal signal hardware, do you utilize voice messages over the outdoor speaker system, or do you use simple siren tones only? If tones only, how do you train your students, faculty, and staff on the meaning of the tones, or is it simply directing them to check their phones for more information?
So that's a great question. We actually use both a unique tone and a message. What we have found is that I shouldn't say nobody, very few people can tell the difference in the particular tone, so whether that's an activation tone or an all clear tone, and almost as few people can actually make out and understand the wording that is being pushed out over those sirens. And that's due to reflections off of buildings, locations of the sirens, all kinds of other factors. So really the short piece of information that we really try to train our community on is, if you hear the sirens, go inside. The sirens are really designed to be that other overlaying technology for notifying people that are outdoors. Push them inside. Once they get inside, then, as you mentioned, go to those other sources of information. Look at your phone for a text message. Check email. Check our website for further information. But don't depend on being able to listen to that siren to make out the words that are being broadcast on that siren to figure out exactly what's happening.
Okay, thank you again, Matthew. That was great. We're now going to move toward Guy Beveridge's presentation, and we'll have Jessica intro him now.